Today on Politics Unplugged, why is the business community pushing for major school funding? We speak with the leader of Arizona's Chamber of Commerce. Republicans are slamming Governor Katie Hobbs for reminding the public about their rights when dealing with federal immigration agents like ICE. Plus, the former leader of the state GOP shakes up a pair of high-profile races. So what's up with that? Our panel tries to make sense of it all now on Politics Unplugged.
Good evening. I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged. A major part of Arizona's school funding is still in limbo at the state capitol, and that's not just a big concern for parents. It's also an issue for Arizona's business community. And here to talk about that, Danny Seiden, the president of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thanks for joining us here.
Thanks for having me on.
So you've taken over talking about Proposition 123. It was passed over a decade ago, and what that did was take some money out of the state trust land and move it into school funding, about $300 million a year. You were part of Doug Ducey's administration that crafted that proposal that narrowly passed back then. That expired last year because the legislature couldn't get everything together to put it back on the ballot for renewal. Yep. So you've taken out, you've written an op-ed piece recently. Why are you engaging so heavily in this now?
So as you pointed out, Proposition 123 was passed by voters over a decade ago. It was good policy then, it's good policy now. And all it really does is increase the distribution percentage that comes out of the state land trust, which was constitutionally set up to fund education. So 10 years ago plus, we had a budget issue. Governor Doug Ducey used the land trust to distribute more money to public education, over $300 million a year without raising taxes. It worked, it was successful, protected the general fund, protected other programs. So here we are, 11 years later, it's expired. That money is not going back into education right now. It's a great tool, it's not being used properly, so we've kind of had enough. We're saying just pass an extension on Prop 123. Make it simple. The campaign commercials back then were, vote for 123, it's easy as ABC. They're turning it into an algebra equation right now. They're trying to put ESA issues in there, they're trying to put charter issues in there. Great policy discussions to be had separately. This is about funding our schools and doing it without raising taxes.
Yeah, and in the past, we've seen Republicans want to change how the distribution, who gets money from that. Republicans want just to go for teacher pay raises, things like that. What specifically are you hearing about Democrat demands for this extension and Republican demands?
Sure. No, again, I think everybody wants to see teachers get paid more. I think the Republicans have said in the past, if we do 123 again, we want to lock that money in for something like teacher pay raises. It just doesn't work that way. It just, how you distribute school funds from a state level on down to those local districts, local control does come into play. It is important. It's tough for the legislature to be in the teacher pay business, as we've learned difficulty through the years. So what we've heard is, I think they're kind of working their way through their ideas and saying, you know what, maybe a simple extension that can help us with the budget makes a lot of sense right now. And Democrats, to their credit, have said, let's get more money into public schools. They're always saying that. But again, this is about protecting the budget. This is about using the tools that Arizona has in the right way.
Yeah, because in your op-ed piece, you had mentioned how, there's significant tax cuts on the way. This could help, lessen the blow to education, is what you're saying, if this gets put up on for a vote. And it would still have to be passed by the voters.
Yeah, it would still have to be passed by the voters. And, you mentioned it was narrowly passed last time. They did in a special election, which I would argue is one of our mistakes. I think putting this in a general election makes a lot of sense. People are paying attention. They'll come out and vote. And you're right to connect it to conformity, which is what we always hear about. This is, how the state works with what the federal government just did on their tax changes, the one big beautiful bill, as it's so called. Yeah. And, a lot of fights going on between the governor and the legislature right now. This would really help with that. This again, is a tool that will free up more money in the budget to fund, anything from healthcare and other DES programs, things we don't want to see cut right now.
So people watching right now may be wondering, why is the head of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry? Why are they getting so involved? Why do they care about this right now?
11 years ago, the Chamber was one of the lead advocates for it, because we do care about well-funded public schools, but we care about a healthy state budget. We care about funding things that matter in the right ways that matter. And so again, this is a tool that the state has. Arizona doesn't control a huge portion of its land, so that land trust is meant for public schools. That's how we keep our taxes down.
And so you're an old student of the legislature. You've been down there for a long time. What are you predicting right now? Do you think this is going to move forward? Do you think the legislature will put something on the board that everybody can agree on?
I believe right now we've seen a proposal out there that does extend 123. Unfortunately, it has some of those more complicating things I mentioned, ESAs, charter reforms. And again, keeping it simple and separated is what is likely to pass with the voters, is what's going to get the votes. And private conversations we're having with legislature, the leadership, the governor's office, I have a good feeling we'll be able to get something through. Voters will have the opportunity to fund public schools without raising taxes.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit now. We got you on the show. We have to start talking about one of the big issues, obviously, past few months has been the immigration raids, the bigger surges we've seen in Minneapolis and in other places. ICE is still in communities. It's still here. It's here in Phoenix. I got to ask you: are these things good for business in general?
In general, no. It's not good when ICE is coming to town and collaterally we're hearing stories that people are here completely legally, have the right legal status, but they're afraid. They're afraid of, the reports out of Minnesota. They're afraid of some of the way in which ICE has conducted itself, where, American citizens are obviously not being treated well. We're hearing stories of valid American workers being detained and then let go with 2 hours. This idea of a correct process is just not happening. So there's some collateral problems with it right now, Dennis. And I will say, again, in Arizona, especially the chamber members, they use E-Verify. They do everything the right way. They hire correctly. They follow all the federal laws that they possibly can. And if there needs to be reforms in E-Verify, that's a federal issue. Let's take care of it federally. But my members in this state are doing everything they possibly can to comply with the law and follow the law. But I got to tell you, we have always benefited from legal immigration workers here. They're a great add-on to our workforce. They're a great add-on to our communities. And to see people who are here legally afraid. You say, well, if they haven't done anything wrong, they shouldn't be afraid. That's just not the case anymore. I think people are scared because they don't know exactly what the rules are. They don't know how to interact and exchange. And I think that is never a positive thing. But again, I think that pendulum on illegal immigration has swung so far in the other direction. Hopefully we can get some reasonable minds at the table and start talking about how we get back on track towards a healthy system.
And we've seen the border come slow to a trickle now under the Trump administration. What has been the net impact that you're hearing from the business community? Are they able to find enough work, enough labor, employees out there? Or is this creating a struggle for them as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again,
because obviously, to be honest, people were coming across the border, for something, and they were getting jobs and businesses were hiring.
No. And again, it's always a mistake to just equate immigration with kind of labor type jobs and the menial labor, the day laborers. Our employers in Arizona have used H-1Bs to get highly skilled, very specific workers who are trained in a certain area into the state to train American workers to help grow our overall workforce. And we've done that healthily for a long time. Right now, there's been some uncertainty with those programs. And again, what the business community loves more than anything else is certainty. We need to know what the rules are. We know how to comply with them legally, and then we move forward. And right now, everything changes daily. And, new stories change daily. And that's not good for business. That's not good for the country. And it's not good for President Trump's mission of onshoring all the manufacturing back in America.
And we've seen some polling now that shows that a majority of Americans do not approve of ICE's tactics and the immigration enforcement. Is the business community here, how would you rank or rate or grade the president's handling of immigration enforcement?
That's a question beyond my, I would say beyond my qualifications. But I would tell you this: what I would grade as, if his goal was to cut illegal border crossings down, he's done that. To your point you mentioned earlier, we've seen it at a near zero in terms of legal crossings. So you can say there's success there. I do believe this president understands the need for highly skilled, highly trained legal workers to come into our country. And so what I like to see is that step 2. Okay, we've cut down illegal crossings. Let's talk about how we improve our legal immigration system, how we get people into this country legally and make them feel safe and secure so they can be here, be part of our communities, be part of the Arizona we know is very welcoming and provides opportunity for all.
All right, we have to end it right there. Danny Seiden with the Arizona Chamber of Commerce.
Easy questions today, Dennis. Thank you.
Industry. All right. And coming up next, I'll be bringing in our panel to talk about all of this week's major headlines, including the president's call for Republicans to nationalize elections. That's next on Politics Unplugged.
Nationalizing elections, the big announcement that wasn't, and the president's campaign for the Nobel Peace Prize gets trolled. This is your political roundup. President Donald Trump repeated his extraordinary calls for Republicans to nationalize voting in the United States. At the same time, his White House tried walking back the comments. Even members of his own party slammed the idea as unconstitutional. Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem stopped in Nogales for what was billed as a major announcement on the border. But in the end, there was no major announcement. Noem used the spotlight to praise President Trump and hand out some trophies to Border Patrol agents. Speaking of federal agents, Governor Katie Hobbs unveiled a website that informs the public about their rights during ICE stops. That didn't sit well with some Republicans who criticized the governor for what they called a half-baked political stunt. And finally, Minneapolis was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for its anti-ICE protests by the progressive news outlet The Nation. This comes as the president himself has repeatedly said he deserves the award, going as far as accepting someone else's prize.
And let's bring in our panel to talk about all of that. With us today is Republican Chip Scutari and Democrat Stacey Pearson. So thank you guys very much for being here today. Let's talk, and let's start with the president once again. He repeated a couple of times now. He says that Republicans that should nationalize the elections. How serious should we take this?
I think we should take it very seriously in term 2 of Donald Trump's presidency. What he says now, he means it. The first term it was different. He was surrounded by more normal, old school Republicans who would hold him in check. But this is part of his grievance tour. And even as a Republican, if you look at just the facts, the very conservative Heritage Foundation did a study where they looked at 20 years trying to find non-citizens voting. They found 24 instances in 20 years. That shows you that this really isn't a big deal. But what is scary to our democracy is these craven politicians, left or right, if you're going to, it damages free and fair elections. They're trying to sow doubt into our elections, and that's huge in this midterm. So people should be aware of it, and hopefully Republicans will keep pushing back on this. They do not want to nationalize elections, and they've said so this week. Yeah,
and we saw a former advisor, Steve Bannon, recently say that, talk about having ICE swarm and surround the polls come the midterms. Is it fair to connect what he's saying with what the president's saying at this point?
Of course. And what is happening right now is the tail is wagging the dog, and we're seeing at a local level some really scary referrals. One right now making its way through the Arizona legislature to change the way we vote, to severely reduce who can get mail-in ballots and when they can drop them off, and who needs to show ID and who doesn't, and how often you need to sign up for permanent early voting. So this is certainly, the national scale is getting a ton of election, and unconstitutional proposals getting a ton of attention, but locally, people need to start paying attention. I mean, there are some terrifying things coming out of the state legislature.
I think if Republicans on this issue, if they want to stay on their yoga mat, so to speak, they could try to pass, ID laws, or the SAVE Act, where, you have to require ID, birth certificate, passport. Something like that has huge support between Republicans and Democrats across the country. So if Donald Trump would focus on that more than these outlandish ideas of nationalizing elections, it would probably gain steam with the public. And
speaking of elections in the legislature, they're moving some legislation through a bipartisan support to move up the primary election by a few weeks. How big of an impact is this going to make on the elections this year? Because it's requiring an emergency clause, which means it would go in effect immediately, which would affect this cycle.
Oh, it makes a huge difference. We have one of the shortest windows between a primary election and the general in the country, and we have candidates on both sides that come out battered, bruised, and broke. And so is more time between their primaries that they win and their generals, where they get to defend their records and run fairly and effectively, the better for consumers.
And also, this will be the first year ever where we're going to have a governor, lieutenant governor team on both sides for governor. So this gives those teams more time to strut their stuff for a general election audience.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because we are now getting into the meat of the election year. Lieutenant governors out there, any names that you're hearing out there to run on a ticket with Hobbs, or the eventual Republican nominee, whoever that may be, out of Karen Taylor Robeson, Andy Biggs, or David Schweiker?
Yeah, I've heard names. I don't want to mention any because I don't want to ruin their chances. But, that'll be there. These talks are going on behind the scenes. One that I've heard for Democrats, he was just named to the Board of Regents, is Jimmy McCain. That may be, just throwing it out there as a trial balloon. But, these candidates have to get through, on the Republican side, Andy Biggs or Karen Taylor Robeson or David Schweiker has to get through that primary, then they'll pick someone. But I'm sure these conversations are ongoing.
Yeah, I think a name I keep hearing, too, that could be a wanted commodity for a lieutenant on the Republican side would be someone like a Debbie Lesko, former state lawmaker, congresswoman. She's now on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. What are you hearing?
So I'm sworn to secrecy on what I'm really hearing. But what I'm hearing is people
Thanks for being honest about that. Yeah, right.
But people are excited about the fact that we have a lieutenant governor. How many times have we had a secretary of state in our lifetimes? Multiple, right? 3-4 times we've had a secretary of state step into that position. And we didn't elect someone for governor when we elected a secretary of state. And we get stuck with these folks. So it's nice to know that there's a succession plan.
All right, we're going to have to take a quick break right now. But when we come back, the governor gets criticized for reminding people of their constitutional rights. That's next here on Politics Unplugged. And to get more in-depth on the issues, check out the Politics Unplugged podcast. This week, I'm joined by Democratic consultant Tony Connie. Politics Unplugged podcast drops every Sunday evening wherever you get your podcast. Now, keeping the panel back here, thanks for sticking around. Let's talk a little bit about this website Governor Hobbs unveiled, reminding people about their rights should they be having an encounter with ICE. Now, this was quickly criticized by some Republicans out there who are calling this just a political stunt. A lot of Democrats drawing the connection between that kind of criticism and the kind of criticism Senator Kelly is dealing with for what he did.
It's good company to be in if you're being criticized the same way Mark Kelly was in telling troops that they don't have to follow illegal orders. And certainly the governor's office is getting calls from citizens who are very concerned about what happens if they're stopped in an ICE raid. And what we saw in Minnesota is terrifying. So the governor putting together a website with information that is readily available is not a stunt, it's good governance. It is just like the website Governor Ducey put together in how to not get COVID. I mean, how to not get entrapped in an operation is a really good move.
Okay. Is this good politics, though, for the governor who's up for re-election this year?
I think it's a good public service. I mean, even as a Republican, I don't say like, oh, this is a political stunt. People have to know their rights. People are scared after what happened in Minneapolis, especially, if a masked man with a gun breaks into your house or apartment, no identification that they're law enforcement. It's scary. And one of the things that people have to be up to speed about is their Fourth Amendment rights of illegal search and seizure, and that these warrants that are ICE issued warrants are different than a judge issuing a warrant. So people have to know their rights. I'm fine with that. Get all the information out to the public so they're well informed.
And sticking with the politics of this, is Governor Hobbs doing enough on this issue? We've seen other Democratic governors across the country, put out more robust plans against ICE. We've seen that in Illinois. We've seen that in Massachusetts and some other places. Barring entities from entering 287G programs. Ordering their troops not to cooperate with ICE and stuff like that. Now, the governor has vetoed some bills at the legislature that would do stuff like that, but should she be doing more?
So Governor Hobbs is a border state governor, a Democrat in a red state that happens to be a border state. So her position on immigration is exactly where the voters of Arizona have been. She put additional National Guard troops when we had an open border program under Biden. This now, her reminding folks what their rights are, we're in a different situation in Arizona, and we've been through this. We had 1070. This is 1070 2.0. So she's doing exactly what the voters of Arizona, particularly crossover voters, want her to do.
And the political reality for Governor Hobbs in a reddish, purplish state, Republicans outnumber Democrats by, I believe, 300,000 voters. So she has to walk this middle line and be more of a centrist than some of these other liberal governors in deep blue states. All
right, let's talk a little bit about a big shakeup in the political races this year. Gina Swoboda, she's the former chairwoman of the Arizona Republican Party. She's filed a statement of interest, or was intending to run in Congressional District 1 for David Schweiker's old congressional seat, but now she has filed a statement of interest to run for the Secretary of State's office. That doesn't mean she's running for the Secretary of State's office. It means, according to some reports we've seen this morning, that she's waiting to hear what Donald Trump wants her to do. Talk to us a little bit about how this changes the dynamics of Arizona's election season right now?
Well, I think for Gina Swoboda, her background and her knowledge of elections, this running for Secretary of State is a much better fit, in my humble opinion, for her than CD1. And I think if she were to run for Secretary of State and emerge from the primary, Adrian Fontes probably wouldn't be happy because they'd much rather go against her competitor in the Secretary of State's race. So I think it's a good move for her. She had struggled to raise funds as of this date as we're taping this. So I think I don't have any knowledge, but I think she'll run for Secretary of State.
Yeah, because if she stays in the CD1 race, she would have to defeat the former football kicker, Jay Feely. Both of them have Donald Trump's endorsement in that Republican primary out there. Does Swoboda pose a bigger problem? Would she win the primary for Secretary of State and pose a bigger problem for Adrian Fontes in the general election?
So that's the question, right? Does a sane person who's not wearing a tinfoil hat, who believes the 2020 election was not controlled by laser beams, does she win? And Gina Swoboda is very sane, and she would be a stickler for the law and the procedures manual that govern our elections. She would be in a fight with the Trump administration, I'm assuming, to nationalize our elections. And Collin, who she's running, if she gets in, that she's running against, is the guy that wants to end mail-in voting. He's had multiple bills that attempted to do that.
This will be a fascinating look at the Republican Party in Arizona if it's Gina Swoboda versus Collin.
Well, let's talk about the CD1 race in general. Do you think Democrats can finally pick up a win here? We've talked over and over. While David Schweikert was running, every couple of years, Stacey's party would think, oh, we're going to win here, and they would lose every 2 years. Do you think this is the year?
We'll have to see how the campaign shakes out. I just, every 2 years, as we all know, CD1, it's a prime spot for a Dem pickup, and it just doesn't happen. So I'm kind of on the wait and see. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about it, and now let's move on. More action out of the legislature. The Republican-controlled legislature voted to censure Chris Mays for comments she made about stand your ground rules in Arizona and ICE raids. I want to get your thoughts on this. Is this something that Republicans can actually get some political mileage out of?
No. I mean, I think they get more political mileage over their lunch order on Thursday afternoons. I mean, Chris Mays made a comment that has lapped the globe. In no way does she not support law enforcement. And so they're making a bunch to do out of very little, and they're playing to the base.
I think what happened was, and I'm sure Chris Mays, the Attorney General, is not happy about this, is when Governor Hobbs commented on this, it gave the story some oxygen, which we all know Governor Hobbs, she's not a shoot-from-the-hip kind of politician, so maybe she put some thought into this. She wants to craft her centrist, tough on immigration stance, so that was unfortunate for Attorney General Mays. We'll see what happens, but I think this will probably go away in a few weeks because there's so much happening. Everyone's flooding the zone.
Yeah, and talk to me real quick. We got about 30 seconds left. Why would the governor weigh in on this and call for Mays to take back her words?
Because you can't shoot cops. I mean, it's really, even if they come into your home.
Was Mays saying?
It wasn't as clear as it could have been. And that's an unfortunate mistake. But certainly she wasn't advocating to use stand your ground against law enforcement. Sometimes weird things come out. Look at the things I've said on the show over the years. Sometimes weird stuff comes out of your mouth on accident.
We'll have to cut together a montage next time we stop by. All right, but that is all the time we have. Be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.